faces in the background if you want. Hey, welcome to Outrageous Originality, where a soul that I love and admire, spend some time outside and ask them 3 questions about life and being true to self. And today my guest is Richard Meyer, poet and retired teacher of the Humanities, and my personal introducer to the muses. Your career as a teacher of humanities, what insights do you feel it brought to your life?
Well, first of all, thank you for sitting down and visiting with me, Esther. In all the years that I taught the humanities, I used to tell my students that studying the humanities is like putting together a large mosaic. And that mosaic, a mosaic of course, is a picture made up of thousands of tiny bits and pieces. And in the humanities, when you look at the arts, everything we study, every poem, every painting, every sculpture, every work of music, every work of architecture was adding another piece to that huge mosaic. And it creates a picture that's always enlarging but never complete. And that's what I particularly enjoy, because the humanities draws in all of the arts. And as we keep building this mosaic, we learn not only more about life and the world and our common humanity, but our place in it.
How is poetry different from chit-chat?
People used to say there are 2 kinds of writing, poetry and prose. And then, of course, maybe there's a third, spoken language. The very famous 18th century British poet, Alexander Pope, said this. He said, "A poem is what oft was thought, but ne'er so well expressed." And I still adhere to that belief. I think that poets often some poets like to think they're smarter than other people are, but they're really not. I think what a good poem does, and what a poet is good at, is expressing in a new or novel way something that all people already know and feel. But the poet is simply maybe more adept at putting the best words in the best order and drawing us below the surface of something that we've already kind of felt or known, but say to ourselves, yeah, that's exactly how I felt or thought. And that's, I think, there's a famous jazz musician, composer and musician. His name was Thelonious Monk. And he said, "I don't have a definition for jazz. You're just supposed to know it when you hear it." And I think that same definition could be applied to poetry. It's often difficult to define, but when you hear the magic of words and metaphors and images, you know you're listening to a very special arrangement of language. I'd be delighted to. One of my favorite poets is Emily Dickinson. I call her the Divine Emily. And in fact, I genuflect at the altar of her genius. And Emily Dickinson wrote a poem that is one of her most popular, that begins, "Some keep the Sabbath by going to church. I keep it staying at home. With a bobolink for a chorister and an orchard for a dome." And I wrote a poem, and I didn't have Emily in mind when I wrote it, but I thought of her after I had written the poem, sometime after I had written it. I'm not a religious person. I don't follow any particular religious creed. But I believe that the myths and stories that we find in all religious traditions that go back thousands of years are trying to tell us something metaphorical or symbolic about life in the world and the human condition. So I sometimes use religious imagery in my poetry in a metaphorical way, not in a literal or dogmatic way. And this poem, it's the month of June.
Here, 1 second.
So this poem is called Sunday Morning in June. And it's using metaphors, some of them with a religious suggestion, but to describe something that's just ordinary and secular. And it's from my book, Orbital Paths. Sunday morning in June. Arched branches catch the slanting light. Maple leaves brighten like bits of green glass. Toast and coffee wait on the back porch table. Familiar morning gifts set out in a screen vestibule. The lawn, a deep green nave, vaulted in blue, stops abruptly at the alley. A simple T traced in grass and gravel. From the neighbor's kitchen window, the clink of a spoon in a cereal bowl pings like an altar bell. Little silver notes chiming through the high hedge. A robin splashes in the bird bath, sprays a blessing of water drops. Finches and common sparrows congregate at the feeders. Pulsing red on a telephone wire, a cardinal calls out the good news. The mixed choir chirps and whistles. A squirrel, stoop-shouldered and gray, sermonizes from an ash limb. Peonies kneel at a garden fence, bow their thick, perfumed heads, and the faint clink, clink, clink of metal on china rings again like a bell announcing matins.
Thank you. And this book can be gotten. You can get this book
You can still order it through Amazon or a local bookstore.
Yay! Thank you so much.
You're most welcome.